Hello, this is John again, 98 Pontiac John. I'd like to talk to my friend Ernie in Ohio. Now, Ernie had a stroke recently and has lost much of his eye vision. He can't watch television, but he's still interested as a proud American about what's happening in our country. And he asked me to continue to do these videos, so I think I'll do them as if Ernie is sitting right in front of me and we're talking. And the rest of you can listen in, and please make a comment if you want to talk about something or want me to discuss something. And so we face the fact that we are living in confusing, difficult, fearful times. Got to figure out what's true, what's false, who to trust. Our entire world is falling apart, not only in this country, but other countries as well. Is there a reason for it? Yeah, probably is a reason. One of the reasons is maybe we haven't been paying attention enough. We see that our federal institutions that we've trusted all our lives, admired without question, well, they seem to be in question now. The FBI, the Justice Department are run by monsters with no respect for equal justice or the rule of law. And other ones, arm in arm, is the IRS. And they survey and conservatives and have been for years. And this has been going on for years. And we're even shocked when we go down to our own school boards and we find out what's happening to our children and the education that in the books that are going into schools when we wouldn't allow the language to be used at home. And is it by accident? No, it's by intent. And they sneak these things in very simply. And one of the things that they've done it was the fact of sex education in schools. When I was a kid, that's when it was first developed, because it was good to show the children about sex from teachers and watching a movie or whatever. And what they did, they took away the relationship between parents and children, where the parents would explain the facts of life, the birds and the bees and the like. And when the school interfered with that, it was a subtle but significant divide between the bond and the relationship between parents and children. And that's just in the education part. But if we look at what's happening in the world, and we see how severe that is coming to affect all of us. And it seems that as a young person watching the FBI on TV or watching the FBI movies, we were proud to have those people doing the things they did. And we realized that if you were called in by an FBI agent, you lied to that FBI agent, you'd go to jail for lying to FBI agents. Now we turn on the congressional hearings, and you're seeing all these FBI agents lie and lie and lie. And the FBI came out and they didn't want a certain man to be president, Trump. So they had a program, an insurance policy to make sure he wasn't going to be Trump. And when he did become president, they had a program to get him impeached and thrown out as president. And it's those things that are just shattering and hard to believe. And when you think of how they did this, like Roger Stone, who was a political guy, a hack, Democrats didn't like him, a lot of Republicans didn't like him, but he was a guy around Washington. And he was kind of an intellect, wrote books and discussed things. He worked for Nixon. And he was a Republican. And the FBI, he testified in front of Congress, and Congress, along with all of the people who lied, they pick out old Roger Stone, and they didn't just arrest him. They had at 6 o'clock in the morning SWAT teams of dozens of SWAT people in military outfits with bulletproof vests and machine guns and a helicopter, and they'd have done an intercoastal, so they had boats there to arrest him at 6 o'clock in the morning. The guy's almost 70 years old. He's 67 years old. He and his wife live in a little house in Fort Lauderdale, and Manafort, the other person who worked for Trump as a campaign manager, but thrown in the Washington jail in solitary confinement for doing what was done, common practice in Washington. And yet, because he worked for Trump, they went after him and put him in jail, and so yeah, those are isolated politicians. Just see those things happen, and yes, they're horrible. And then we see on January 6th, over 1 million people go to Washington to see to support the president in the election, because it was controversial, no question about it. But the American people who were there, I was one of them, was 1 million strong, and they were flag-toting from around the country. All 50 states had people there. Many of them had their children there. And I remember Woodstock. And we had 1 million people there on January 6th, and it was a cold, windy day. And then in 1969, I didn't go to, but I remember Woodstock. It had 400,000 people. And it took them weeks and weeks to clean up the mess that those, and there was no problem there. But the trash from Woodstock was a pigsty. And yet in Washington, over 1 million people were there. At the end of the day, there wasn't even a cigarette candy bar package on the street. There was no trash, no nothing, no damage. The only damage perhaps was in the Congress that we saw, and it has to be resolved who did the damage. It wasn't the people that I met, the thousands of people I saw with their children waving flags, elderly couples. That was the people, the caliber of people, Americans that are concerned about the election, Americans that love their country, and Americans are willing to support it, ride a bus from different parts of the country to be there. And the results, the FBI masses the largest investigation in American history. Bigger than 9/11. This investigation, there's more agents than working on 9/11 on any other problem in the country, the mob, nothing. This is the largest single operation investigation the FBI conducted. And they got some results. They got some belts on their, they got some scalps on their belts. They got over 1,000 arrests. People that were trying to even prevent it, from people from getting into the Capitol building. That was doors opened, and police were waving them in. And yet there's a grandmother in Texas who walked through, and she had cancer, and she was one of those arrested proudly by the FBI, and she ended up going to jail over it with cancer, 60-some years old. And the FBI is not content with that. They have another list, and yours truly may be on that list. They want to indict 1,200 more people. For what? For protesting. And yet, in the summer, the prior summer and the like, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, all those problems, how many people do you ever see arrested? Go to jail? Unheard of. And it was a as I say, on that day, it was cold. There wasn't a building open. The hotels were closed. The public restaurants were closed. And what I witnessed was good people from all 50 states loving America. And when the Congress questions the FBI or the Justice Department about the way that they investigated this stuff, they can't get a straight answer. I'll have to get back to your under investigation. It's this, that, and the other thing. And the FBI have been different agents, including the head of the FBI has apparently lied to the Congress. And I wonder if he's worried about going to jail. I know if I lied to the Congress, I'd go to jail. And if I lied to the FBI, I'd go to jail. And yet I haven't seen any FBI agents that have lied, even under the Trump administration, have gone to jail. None of them. And so we have to try to figure out exactly how do we get to this shape here when everything's so crazy. Well, I don't know, Ernie, but I have a tendency to believe that we've been deliberately distracted for many years. We've been distracted with sports, TV, video games, the Kardashians, Bachelorette, all those other things. And we knew who the quarterback was. And look at the outrage when that quarterback from New England had 15 pounds of air in the football. Everybody had opinion. Everybody knew exactly what was right and wrong about that. But when it comes to what's happening in Washington, the shrug of the shoulders. Cheating in elections, well, everybody does it. I wonder if you watch a golf game and say, well, they all cheat in golf. How many people would watch the game? No. And we were deliberately, I believe, misled, dumbed down, whatever you want to call it. Our attention was taken away from Washington. We'd have once a year a grand finale of two candidates, and they were basically out of the same farm. If it was a horse race, it'd be the same two horses running, 2 or 3 horses running, but all from the same farm. So, and it was like a uniparty almost. There's one exception, and we'll say about that. And but our country is kind of like America. I was thinking when I was working the yard is kind of like our home, and just like on the borders. I wouldn't let anybody just come into my house, leave the door open. Now the doors, we have a welcome mat there to welcome people in, but that's with the understanding that that I invite that party in. That welcome mat is not in the driveway; it's on the front door, and we allow guests in our house, but we don't allow uninvited guests in the house. In America, that's the way it used to be. We invite people into our country to work and to legally stay here. But nowadays, and it's tragic that these people that are coming in over the borders and the like. And the sad part is that there's the frightening part is that so many of them are basically kind of almost 2 categories, it seems. One is a predominant categories, middle-aged young men, military age, coming into this country. And they ain't coming in to join the army. They look like they're from another army, but they're coming in from all different nationalities. And the other is these children are coming in, thousands and thousands of children. And as reported in Congress, made the headlines for, not even the headlines, page 3, that 85,000 children that were came over the border, that were entrusted to the federal government, disappeared. 85,000. And then that movie came out about the Sound of Freedom, and that was addressed some of the what's happening in the world. And the movie in itself is a simple movie of about a courageous man who had a desire to go after two children in spite of all the odds and achieve the goal. Now, it's a unique classic movie by itself, a standalone movie. Years ago in 1956, John Wayne made a movie called The Seekers. And John Wayne, the story goes, it was directed by John Ford, but the Duke comes home after the Civil War, and he joins one of the local families had a daughter that was kidnapped by the Indians. So he and another guy went out to find the Indians that kidnapped this girl and bring her home. And it took them years to do this saga. And that's basically what this Sound of Freedom is about, the same, very similar. And it's a good movie, but it shines the light on human trafficking with children. And these children, we fought a war over slavery. And what's happening to children throughout the world is even worse. And we're, as a country, allowing this to participate. As testified in Congress, that 85,000 children have disappeared with American supervision. And don't want to get off track here, Ernie, but I do think that the American people are starting to wake up a little bit, and we seem to wake up and look out the window of our home or our country. We see these, our yard has been filled with corrupt weeds taking over and crippling our branches of government. And we have to do something about it. And we fortunately are doing something about it. The Congress is shining the light on some of the corruption throughout the government, especially, and there'll be more lights shining on what we can see, the horrific corruption that's been going on. And the people that have turned the light or shined the light on some of this corruption, like the Bidens and their millions and millions and millions of dollars of bribes, was done by the Democratic IRS agents, or one of them was at any rate. And but he had to come as under fear for his own life and safety. But he did, and so the light is shining, and we're getting more and more light shining on this. And Trump is a great leader, and hopefully the truth come out about the 2020 election. And as a great leader, he could not awaken the American public. The American public had to wake by themselves. They had to be shown what is happening. They had to be shown maybe just how evil these agencies, this corruption has been for years and years and years. And I date back to the Watergate. If you remember the Watergate, for those who do remember, Richard Nixon and the 25th Amendment. They got both he and Agnew out. And there was a book written about it called the Watergate Amendment. It's a great book. It shines a little light on the corruption. But at the end of this, Bob Woodward, who was one of the characters in the Watergate story, years after everything was settled down, they came out and they said, "Who was Deep Throat? Who's this secret person?" And it was the number 3 guy at the FBI, and he was the one who destroyed Nixon by feeding on a regular basis Bob Woodward and not Bernstein, because Bernstein was just a fumbler. Woodward was the guy, and so that corruption goes back to even the writing of the 25th Amendment. So Nelson Rockefeller could become president, but that's another story. But the attention span of Ernie is sometimes limited. So I just about finished. I just got one more point, and that is the uh, it's nice to see someone like Ernie with his not with his eyes failing, and yet his love of his country is not failing. He is still concerned about our country, his children, his grandchildren, and wants to know what he can do. And there is something that Ernie can do, and that is be aware what's happening. Because the whole key to this is the American people. Because Trump couldn't do anything without the American people. The U.S. military can't do anything without the American people. So as we as Americans open our eyes, become aware, seek the truth, just open-mindedness, seeking the truth, what is true, follow whatever is true, that is the strongest weapon in a free society, is the freedom of finding what the truth is. And the Declaration of Independence was written for we the people. And we the people must accept nothing less the truth, nothing but the truth. And as Solzhenitsyn, in 1974, Solzhenitsyn, a Russian dissident, he was thrown out of the Soviet Union, and his followers were crushed that he was leaving. And he said something to the effect, he said, don't worry about me. He said, and don't burn flags, don't protest, don't do this, don't. He said, the most important thing is seek the truth. Be aware. And if you seek the truth, the liars and the Soviet Union will disappear. And they did, under the weight of the people that lived within the Soviet Union. They are the ones who changed the world, the people. And the greatest weapon that we have is the truth. And if as Americans we follow the truth, it's much more comfortable. And we can stare down these liars, these manipulators, these crooks that are trying to destroy our country, our children's futures. I hope you agree with me, Ernie. Thank you.